Who do you think is the best quarterback returning this fall? Find out our top five here on First and Short.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to First and Short, your first place to get short bits of college football news and analysis. Today's episode is, as always, hosted by Aaron and myself, Mashfik. Before we get started, we want to talk about these quarterbacks. Trust me, we're excited. But before we get there, please remember to subscribe. If you're watching this, just quickly check if you've subscribed to us already, and also check to see if you're following us on the podcast, on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. I listen to our podcast pretty often in the car. We sound great, so I think you'll enjoy that while you're headed to work or headed to whatever else you do while you're in the car. So, as Aaron mentioned, we want to talk about who are the best quarterbacks coming this fall. Who should we be watching out for in terms of Heisman capabilities, right? But before we get into that, we also want to talk about the fact that NCAA, it seems like they're trying to grow some teeth and do something against tampering. So we're gonna just go ahead and get into that. Aaron, any quick thoughts before we dive in?
Yeah, no, I'm excited to see, the NCAA, they're trying to evolve with this fast evolving game,
Yeah,
it's still all revolving around NIL and how fast people can transfer and play. So, yeah,
yeah,
tell us what you've learned, Mash.
yeah. Right, exactly. So I mean, it's kind of in a nebulous, right? Like, what can the NCAA do? It doesn't seem like they've enforced much over the last few years, especially with, like you said, the game's evolving. NIL is the biggest factor in all of these students, decision making. There's the whole NIL Go thing where Deloitte is controlling, or they're trying to control, like anything above $600 or whatever that number is. But we haven't heard about anyone getting in trouble yet. It seems like everyone's able to just get around that. In any case, with the tampering, I guess the NCAA is like, let's start from at least somewhere. Let's start solving the problems that exist in the sport somewhere. And I think tampering is a great place to start. It destabilizes the sport a lot, right? Like, if you have a team and then all of a sudden your team can just be swept away from underneath you, no other sport doesn't have protections around that. So on February 25th, just a few days ago, the NCAA, they introduced a 6-game suspension kind of enforcement on the college football landscape, and this is their war on tampering. Basically, they recommended an emergency legislation. If it goes through, it'll be effective retroactive to February 25th, and it's going to target coaches who aim for students outside of that 2-week window. So just for review, like this year, it was from January 2nd to the 16th this year, right? And so if a head coach decides to take a player who wasn't officially in the portal in that window, again, players can join teams outside that window. They just have to enter during that window. So if a coach picks up a player who was not in the portal in that 2-week window, the NCAA is looking for enforcement powers to prohibit the head coach from all football activities for 6 games. This includes recruiting, coaching, team meetings, all that sort of stuff. The school is going to be fined 20% of its football budget, which at some of these bigger schools is pretty penny. And the school would be required to reduce the number of roster spots by 5 for the next season, regardless if the coach is going to be there or not. So these enforcement kind of ideas, this whole emergency legislation, they're going to figure this out at the Division I committee meeting in April. But if it gets voted in, then it'll be effective immediately. So that's kind of the overview of it. Aaron, I just want to ask you, is there any specific situation where you feel like this rule would have been helpful recently?
Yeah, I mean, you talked about that window again, right? Let's talk about Ole Miss adding, former Clemson transfer assignee Luke Farrelly, right?
Right.
He was signed on January 22nd, so nearly a full week after the 2-week portal window closed. Like
Yeah.
how does that happen, right? Um, Longtime Tigers head coach Dabo Sweeney, he held a press conference the next day, and he publicly accused the Rebels head coach, Old Miss Pete Golding, of the blatant tampering. Right? He was accused of allegedly texting Farrelly directly on January 14th when Farrelly was already attending classes at Clemson. So I know we mentioned this story once before, but yeah, like if this rule would have been in place, the impact that Ole Miss would have been
I know, right? Yeah, you get a new
huge.
head coach, and already they can't play. They already can't coach for the first 6 games, which is half the season, right?
Yep.
Um, yeah. Do you think the NCAA is gonna take the 6 game route? Like, 'cause that is half the season. Do you think they'll try to they'll end up like reducing it to four? But like, I've seen a lot of coaches and athletic directors like support this kind of legislation. I saw that on the NCAA page they mentioned Josh Brooks, who is the athletic director at Georgia. He's for this, right? So do you feel like the NCAA is going to stick to six? Do you feel like they're just trying to flex their muscle, or is this something they're actually trying to get down into action?
I think for now they're definitely going to stick to the, the 6 game punishment, just because with something evolving this fast, you if you really want to have control of it, you're gonna have to have severe like punishments and severe you know consequences, right? That's the only way you can really gain control of a situation like this that is so out of control, in my opinion.
Yeah, totally agree there. It was kind of a leading question. I'm all for it because if it was just a little slap on the wrist, then nobody would care and they would just continue to do it, right?
Hmm.
6 games is sizable. It can derail your season, and obviously that can derail a coach's career plus incentives that they have for the year, that sort of thing. I
Right.
my biggest thing is like, are they going to be able to enforce it? I think the NCAA still has power to do stuff, right? In FBS in the grand scheme of things, I guess yeah, technically they don't control like the playoffs or anything like that, but they still like control like what's going on during the inter season of sorts. So hopefully this goes through. I'm all for it. Ramp it up to 8 games. Why stop at six? Ramp it up to eight. Because yeah, we need some type of stability in the sport.
That's right. Hey guys, if you ever wanted to know, Mash is the bad cop. He said he wanted to ramp it up. I said super cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Alrighty. So yeah, next on the agenda, right? Here, on First and Short, we have our top 5 quarterbacks ranked next year, that we think are going to have the biggest impacts and be the best guys up that are returning, and um not, I guess, somebody new, a freshman or anything like that. These are guys who we've seen play before, and we can kind of have objective evidence to say, okay, these guys are worthy of being top 5 top players at the quarterback position. So I'll go ahead and get us kicked off.
What
Number
what
5.
what were some of our what were some of our before we get started, what were some of our
Yeah,
considerations? What were some of the things that we kind of put into the pot in order to make our list?
yeah, absolutely. So some of the things we looked at were, we considered their stats from last year. Um, we were weighing their strengths and their weaknesses, holistically as in their skill set. And then we also looked at how much help they had from their supporting cast.
Right. Right.
Um,
Just
all,
wanted to yeah, I just wanted to put that out there just so we're not pulling stuff out of our backsides here. We put some
Absolutely.
science into this.
Yep, yep, yep. Rhyme and reason, right? So yeah, we'll go ahead and get started. At number 5, we have Darian Mensah, the former Duke quarterback, now Miami quarterback, also known as the ACC villain in our eyes, right?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, at Duke, right? He won the ACC title with a roster that lacked a lot of 5-star depth. Uh, some people may try to put an asterisk on it just because of the record, but hey, they found a way to get there, and they found a way to win that conference championship game against a good Virginia team, right? Um, one of the things that he's great at, right? So he's great at quick processing. He averaged about 3.2 seconds to throw the ball. Um, and he was noted for finding, the weakest link on pretty much every snap. So he's good at the quick dink and dunks and really breaking down defenses. Weaknesses that we see, it's gonna have to be the pure athleticism. So he's not the ultimate dual threat guy, maybe like a 4.75 40. So, he's not gonna outrun, top tier ACC and SEC linebackers. Um, but he is gonna be a guy who's going to make impacts. Um, rank justification. So he's justified at making this top five list because, he was second in the nation in passing yards. Uh, while playing behind what we'd call a pretty average, mediocre Duke offensive line, right? So at Miami, with the help that he's going to have, he could be the number one quarterback on this list revised by October.
Yeah. I will say, like, I'm a little, I don't know how to feel about Mensa. You know, for one, like, I'm just trying to consider the level of competition he had while he was playing, at Duke. Wasn't that great. Um, but also Mario Cristobal at Miami, he was able to take Cam Ward, who was coming from Washington State, similar situation, and he had like no, didn't he have like multiple ACL injuries or something? Um, but he was able to make him a Heisman winner.
Yep.
He was able to take Carson Beck, decent career at Georgia. Uh, Besides like a few bad games where he threw multiple picks, he was in the Heisman conversation. So like he can take this guy. Mario Cristobal can take this guy and put him in the forefront. So I think he's got a lot of upside.
Hmm.
I think he's got a lot of upside. Looking towards like in the fall, let's take a look at their strength of schedule. And a lot of times, uh, your strength of schedule comes into play in terms of like if you have a really easy schedule and you look great, you're going to be in that Heisman conversation the whole year, right? Um, Looking at Miami's schedule, I would put it somewhere in the moderate range. The ACC is pretty deep, but Miami's non-conference schedule is pretty manageable. I think their spotlight game is going to be against Duke, his previous team. If he lights up his former team on the road, um, that's obviously going to be like the number one thing on TV that weekend. And currently, he's actually the FanDuel favorite right now, plus 1,500 to win the Heisman. So there's definitely a lot of hype around behind that whole campaign. There's a lot of money behind him, and he's inheriting a pretty good offensive roster that just went to the Natty game with Carson Beck. So he has like the horsepower to put up high 3,000s, 4,000 yards. He has everything's in front of him to be able to do that. So my question is there a lot of pressure right now? Like, do you think the pressure might be a lot for him? Is there pressure on this guy to keep the U on top? What do you think?
Um, I definitely think, with the manageable schedule that they'll have, the pressure won't really take heed until later on in the season, as it does every year for the University of Miami, right?
Yeah,
They, they were able to make the college football playoff this year, but I feel like the last 3 years they finished, as a two-loss team, right? They they took advantage of that playoff run last year, but yeah, he's gonna have a lot of pressure to come in and and execute at a high level like the quarterbacks before the previous two quarterbacks did before him. Say what you want about Carson Beck, but he had great games where he threw for lots of yards this season. And
yeah,
then of course, before him, quarterback before him, I forgot his name. I think he's in the NFL somewhere playing, right?
yeah,
So he's gonna have to continue this new, you know, DNA that Miami is building right now. Being elite on offense, being a top offensive tier team in the ACC and quite frankly in the nation. So yeah, I think the pressure is going to be on, but we'll see the pressure be applied more towards the end of the season.
Yeah, he is coming in at a high leverage kind of point in his career. We mentioned Cam Ward, we mentioned Carson Beck. He's the third one, and humans love the number three. Everybody loves the trilogy, and Miami's been improving each year over the last couple of years.
Hmm.
So if you make it to the national title game and you're one drive away from winning it, there's only one more step. There's only a little bit left in terms of what you have to accomplish in order to consider it an improvement. So yeah, I think that a lot of pressure will be on this guy, especially considering like the prototypical build that he's coming into Miami with. So that is our number 5 quarterback to watch out for this fall. Let's move on to number 4. Number 4, he was looked at as the face of college football last year at the beginning, and then that face started looking a little stupid after a while, but he found his footing after a bit. Arch
Yep.
Manning at Texas. This guy, I'm glad that the media is kind of like off his back this offseason, right? I just mentioned he was the face of college football for whatever reason. He was taking over for Quinn Ewers. He had barely started a game, but there was a lot of pressure on him. Um, and I think the pressure's off of him right now. Like no one's really we understand that he's obviously in our top 4, but there's not like this like oh he has to win this now, right? And so I think that'll open up his kind of like he'll be a little bit more confident in himself. He'll be able to play a little bit more loose. And I think that's a very real thing um for athletes uh that can weigh on your mental. So we have him at number 4. Um right now, with the help that he had last year, he had a lot of help. We'll put this at a 7 out of 10. Texas had talent, but injuries in the backfield, I think even before the season started, it forced Arch to carry a heavier load than expected. The guy can run, he's very elusive, but it kind of limits a quarterback what you're there to do if you're constantly having to run it yourself. His strengths include that dual threat volatility, that dual threat ability that I just mentioned, but but it can be a little volatile, right? Like he might run it a little too much. He might throw it a little too hard. When you're able to focus on one, you're able to do that aspect of your game a little bit better. So, um, he was the only quarterback on this list to rush for 150 yards in a game. This top 5 list that we have. So he's got a lot of quarterback dual threat ability, baked in. His weakness will be that accuracy, though. His accuracy was 56.3, which put him near the bottom of the FBS. He missed a lot of, you can call them layups, easy passes. He missed them, but now that I think about it, a lot of his help just dropped the ball. So miscommunication between the quarterback and the receiver. But anyway, all of that put together, I feel like that justifies his 4th place on this list. He has a lot of NFL traits, but the stats show a player who is still learning how to be a consistent passer, which unfortunately you have to be pretty good at to make it to the next level, or to be really good, or be in that Heisman conversation for football.
Yeah. Good points, good points. And I think one thing that's going to prove if he has learned how to be a consistent passer is this brutal schedule he's going to have to face in 2026, right?
Yeah.
Uh, going to start out with Ohio State, out of conference foe. I believe they're coming to Texas this
Yep.
year.
Yep.
Um, but again, you're in the SEC, so you're going to play Ole Miss, Tennessee, and LSU. So these tests are not going to be easy for ours, right? I feel like this schedule shows that if we see a pure passer and just a all-star performance in these games, it's going to have Arch, being the highest of ceilings in my opinion, right? But it also is going to have the potential to have the lowest floor, right? It's going to revolve really around that consistency and that statistic that you talked about earlier, right? The accuracy. In 2025, his completion rate was 61.4%, right? if he cleans up the mechanics, we don't see any more throws where it's just where was he throwing to? Why did they go straight to the ground this year? If he works with Steve Sarkisian and he still runs the ball, but not as much, and he has the help that hopefully the NIL, you know, has given him this year. I feel like we're going to see a more well-rounded, less pressured Arch Manning, right?
We ranked his last year's help at 7 out of 10 with
Yeah,
with Cam Coleman and Hollywood Smothers. I mean, that's as close to 10 out of 10 help that you're going to have as a quarterback this year. If any team has the most help, it's Texas this year.
absolutely. So yeah, then I have a question for you, Mash. So is
Yeah.
this the year that we can finally get an honest critique on Arch Manning?
I mean, it's going to have to be, right? Like I imagine this is his last year. I don't know how much eligibility he has left. I'm sure he has NFL aspirations. So it's going to have to be an honest critique here. I don't think last year was his best year, like statistically, but I don't think it was good enough for him, for Texas, for his NFL plans. So yeah, we're gonna have to be honest, and he's gonna have to be honest in terms of like what he's good at and what he wants to show the world. But again, he's gonna have a lot of help. I think a lot of people on that offensive side is gonna be able to help out in that department.
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. Yep. So moving on to our next person on the list at number 3, we have Dante Moore at Oregon, right? Um, he's going to be our guy who's the deep threat specialist, right? So he led the country with a 98.5 PFF grade on deep throws. He finished the year with 3,500 yards and 30 touchdowns. Outstanding year. The help he had, of course, was there. It was elite. Oregon pretty much had every person they need in every position. The O line was elite. We're going to give them an 8 out of 10 here, right? Um, on average, they at least gave him 2.52 seconds to throw. So, and in most cases, that's very high, right? Very, very high compared to the league. His strengths. We call him the deep threat specialist. So again, it's going to be revolving around that vertical game. He's a guy who is going to make those throws over 20 yards, and he has the receivers and the athletic guys on the edges to go get it. So it's why he was seeked out to be, a potential top 2, top 3 pro quarterback this year, but he decided to come back. Um, you know, rank justification. So again, his big time throw had him ranked among top quarterbacks in the nations, but the turnovers that he had this year prevented him from getting into that number 2 or number 1 spot, right? Um, yeah, Mash. Any inputs or comments on that?
No, those are all good. I would agree with all of that. I think looking into this next season, he obviously, he had the option to go to the NFL. He decided to come back. He wants to make the most. He wants to make the best and the most of it. Looking at Oregon's schedule, if we had to rate it difficulty wise, somewhere between moderate and high. They do face a pretty travel heavy schedule. I'm looking at it right now. They have to go to Oklahoma State. That's a pretty fun non-conference game. They have to go to USC, to Illinois, to Ohio State, to Michigan State. So, that's I guess that's the perks of being a West Coast Big Ten team. But
Mhm.
that travel it's definitely going to have a toll. I don't care what anybody says. That much jet lag, that much time up in the air, that much like being away from home, definitely has an effect. So yeah, and those are good teams. And those are good teams that they're going to go face. Um, so Dante Moore, turned down the NFL, kind of, or at least put it on pause for now. He's going for that unfinished business type of narrative. But he did lose his top 3 receivers to the NFL. They didn't necessarily have that same business mentality, unfinished business mentality. So if he's able to put up the same numbers with a younger core of receiver, I think this will he was already going to be the number 2, maybe 3 quarterback. I think this will prop up his value even more. Maybe he'll get the number 1 spot for next year. I don't know. Do you think he's crazy for leaving that top 5 NFL draft, pick on the table? I've said my thoughts about the whole New York Jets thing, but like, do you think that's crazy? What do you think?
Um, 10 years ago, pre NIL, I'd say absolutely he's crazy. But
Yeah,
the guys have the potential to make, almost more than he's going to make more than some rookies make next year in the NFL, and
yeah.
he's in a system he loves. He's getting the chance to be dominant again for another year, finish out his college career. Hopefully, you know, finishing what he was trying to accomplish last year, right? So I don't necessarily think he's crazy for that, as long as he understands there's a risk at if I don't compete at this same level or have this same level of success and accomplishments, it could lower my draft stock for the next year. Which may be in his favor again if he doesn't want to go to the Jets and the Jets end up being the top team that needs a quarterback again next year, right?
I guess that is a risk that you take. But in the current day, like you mentioned, if you can make money in the meantime, then the risk doesn't seem as bad, I guess.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right, number 2 on our list, we've got Trinidad Chambliss. I think
Mhm.
probably the oldest quarterback on our list. He, yeah, he's number 2 on our list. He's shown a lot of potential, like a lot of talent, a lot of potential. Um, Help wise, right? We're gonna rank this around 6 out of 10. His offensive line was inconsistent, but he was able to make a play out of nothing many times. We saw that throughout his 1 year there at Ole Miss. His offensive line was inconsistent, but the scheme that he played in, it allowed him to play fast and play loose, right? I think his strength is is just that. The performance while he's being chased, the performance while he's running around. It's not always like scrambling and getting that first down. It's scrambling, but also finding the open wide receiver. Um, in the Sugar Bowl against Georgia, for example, he was quite elite, right? Especially when he was blitzed, he went 12 for 22 completion wise, 0 sacks. He led the group of quarterbacks in total offense. He had 44, almost 4,500 yards plus 30 total touchdowns. So he's great under pressure. He's able to make something out of nothing. He's that dude in terms of that. I would say his weakness is, if you can look at his age and ceiling as kind of a weakness, with his age, he's kind of a finished product here, right? Like I don't see him taking like another step magically. So what we saw is probably what we're gonna get again. Um, Scouts love him, but fans, might wonder if he had like another gear left. That's yet to to be seen. But unless unless they just have a variety of help again, at Ole Miss just hiding and we didn't know about him, then we kind of already know what that's gonna look like. So um, I would say that amongst all the blue bloods, all the big teams that we typically talk about throughout FBS, he did the most with the least amount of talent compared to all those other teams. He basically is the Ole Miss off. He was the Ole Miss offense last year, especially more so this upcoming year.
Mhm.
What kind of outlook do you have of this upcoming season this fall for Trinidad Chambliss and the Rebels?
Yeah, so just like, what Arch is gonna have to face, Trinidad's gonna have to face the SEC, right? He's gonna have to face some new faces, particularly one in mind, his old head coach, Lane Kiffin, and new look LSU, who's gonna just have a lot of stars that came in, right? So, and they're gonna face a Georgia team that's seeking redemption, right? So very, very tough schedule. They finished very strong last year, so teams are not gonna take them lightly. Um, and even with that great, performance under fire that he has, I still think people are not going to allow him to just stand there in the pocket and let him throw. So
He
I
he
think the pressure is still coming. All right.
he definitely had an element of surprise last year, right? Like just coming out
Yep.
of D3. or Division two, wherever he came from, and then just lighting it on fire. Like you said,
Yeah.
people aren't going to take that lightly next year.
Yep. And so, with this 2026 season coming, understanding his potential to win the Heisman and everything, right? This this granting of another year he has of eligibility, right? I think it's going to take the same level of a performance last year and translate it to this year for him to have a chance to maybe be a Heisman candidate or a top three. They're going to have to make another college football playoff run, and he'll have to be the senior leader of the media, of the team, everywhere, right? My question, for you, Mash, is okay. Heat check. Can he be as effective as he was last year again?
I'm going to go back to the surprise factor that I just mentioned, right? Teams, defensive coordinators, they're going to know a little bit more what to expect out of this guy.
Mhm.
So that's naturally going to be a step down from that. He doesn't have Lane Kiffin,
Mhm.
or the offensive coordinator, right? So that was a large part of his success from last year. That's not going to be there anymore. So what's the name? Weiss Jr., Tommy Weiss Jr., whatever his name was. Yeah. So, missing a lot of key elements of what made him effective. Is he still going to be good? Absolutely. That's why we have a number 2 on this list. I have high hopes for him. I have high expectations for him. But is he going to be, what's the question? As effective? It's hard to say yes. Yeah. What do you think?
Fair, fair, fair. I don't know. We'll have to see. Yeah, he's like you said, a guy of many surprises, but people have their eyes on him now, and he has a very tough schedule ahead of him. So
Yeah,
I think only time will tell. I can't wait for September.
for sure.
um, yeah. So moving on to the number one spot. Finally, we're here. Top quarterback that we think is going to be, the most effective in 2026, and that is going to go to Julian Sayin at the Ohio State University. Um, you know, he's kind of the guy that's the system perfecter, right? First of all, the help he had last year, 10 out of 10, right? He had probably the nation's best receiving core, and Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate, and then a play caller who protected him. Right. His strength is his ball placement. It's pretty historic. He set a stat record with accuracy at a 74.2 rate and a percentage completion rate of 80%. So he was precise every time he threw the ball. It was with intention. It was to get to his target, and it got to his target most of the time. Um, Weakness, it's gonna have to be, maybe the physicality, right? And then some of the crunch time pressured experiences, right? He only faced uh real pressure in 2 games where those games were losses, in my opinion. You know, this is where his grade, dipped from a 92.3 to a 62.7. So
Yeah, they
we
lost.
saw
They had all that pressure against. Why am I blanking right now? No, they didn't play
Indiana.
No, they didn't. Oh yeah, Indiana, and then before that was no, Indiana was the Big Ten game, and then Miami in the playoffs. That's
Yep.
what it was. Yeah,
Mhm. So
and
guys who
yeah,
were, effective on that edge, right? They definitely affected his gameplay. So we can expect any defensive coordinator looking at that being a major weakness and trying to, you know, emulate that same type of game style. Um, Justification though, you can't ignore the numbers, even with the help, right? This guy was setting the standard on what you want your quarterback to be when he's dropping back in the pocket, right? He's making great passes, very few mistakes.
yep, yep. Um, yeah, he's. I mean, the accuracy numbers. Yeah, he had 10 out of 10 help as we ranked it. So
Mhm.
obviously your completion rate and that's going to be high. I'm glad that he has Jeremiah Smith again. So I imagine that rate will be high again, and I'm sure there's going to be some wide receiver that we don't know about. That was a 5 star. That's buried in a sea of 5 stars there at Ohio State. That'll take Carnell Tate's place, no problem. Looking at their schedule, though, Ohio State's, it's not as easy as it was this last year. They were ranked number one almost the whole year because they were playing high school teams. But this upcoming year, they've got a gauntlet. I mean, they have to go to Indiana. They have to go to USC. They have to play Oregon at home. Of course, they got Michigan at the end of the year. It's just it's night and day different. Oh, I forgot to mention they have to go to Texas. Game 2 of the year. Like they play one non-conference and then go to Austin, right? So they probably have the toughest schedule this upcoming year. So a lot is going to be put on Julian Sand. I think he's very talented, but I imagine they stumble a couple of these games. Maybe not all losses, but like very close, or Julian Sand doesn't look great. And
Mhm.
so I don't think his Heisman candidacy is looking too good, but I think he will still be able to put together a great season. Um, or you could, or on the other side of that coin, now that I think about it, every win that he gets could be a Heisman moment if he's able to repeat kind of the same stats that he had this year. If he's able to repeat 32 touchdowns and 8 interceptions with this slate of opponents, then maybe he is the front runner. So it could go either way, I guess. How do you think he'll fare out? I mean, he is older. He has one more year in the system, but tough schedule. Missing Carnell Tate, still has Jeremiah Smith. What do you think? Give me a ballpark estimate of how you think his season kind of turns out.
Yeah, I still think he'll have a really, really good season. Again, he lost one of his receivers, but I'm sure they'll have somebody else ready to be the number two guy. And he's still got, the running back, I think Bo Walker, right? So the run game, I still think is going to be
Bo
a
Jackson.
heavy Bo Jackson. Bo Jackson. Okay.
Yeah.
Still going to be a heavy presence, right? Still going to be, you know, able to balance their plan of attack because he has a good supporting cast. So I don't think it's all going to be on him, but if they're able to make it out of this regular season undefeated and he puts up the same numbers as he did last year, I think you can't argue against, a Heisman candidacy.
Yep. Yep. Sounds good. All
Mhm.
right, guys, that is our top 5 quarterbacks for this fall. 5 guys to look out for, 5 teams to be excited about. Appreciate you guys watching yet another episode of First and Short. We will be back next week with another episode. We will talk to you then. Thank you.